You probably woke up this morning, went through your routine, and didn't think twice about why you do what you do. Work, relationships, goals, they all seem to have their own momentum, their own obvious purpose. But if someone asked you right now, why does any of this matter? You'd likely give an answer you inherited from someone else. Maybe you'd talk about success, happiness, making a difference. But Friedrich Nietzsche would stop you right there and ask a more unsettling question. Whose idea of success? Whose definition of happiness? Making a difference according to what standard? Because over a century ago, Nietzsche realized something that's only becoming clear to most of us now. We're living by rules for a game that no longer exists. We're following a script written by authors who've been dead for centuries. And the most terrifying part, most of us don't even realize we're acting. Nietzsche's infamous declaration, "God is dead," wasn't him boasting about atheism or celebrating secularism. It was more like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis to civilization. He saw that as science explained more and religion explained less, as traditional authority crumbled and old certainties dissolved. Humanity was losing its fundamental organizing principle. For thousands of years, meaning came from above. There was a plan, a purpose, a reason for everything, even if we couldn't understand it. But what happens when you realize there's no plan? When you discover that the universe isn't a story with you as a character, but just physics and chemistry and vast indifference? Most people haven't truly grappled with this yet. They've stopped believing in God, but kept living as if He exists. They follow Christian morality without Christianity. They pursue success and happiness as if these concepts have inherent meaning, rather than being inventions of particular cultures at particular times. It's like continuing to follow traffic laws in a world without cars. The behavior persists even after its context has vanished. Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? When Nietzsche wrote about the Übermensch, often translated as Superman or Overman, he wasn't imagining some genetic superior being. He was envisioning what humans could become once they accepted full responsibility for creating their own meaning. Not finding it, not discovering it, not uncovering it, creating it. From nothing. Based on nothing but their own will and courage. Think about how you actually make decisions. You probably reference some internal compass. This feels right, that feels wrong. But where did that compass come from? If you trace it back far enough, you'll find it's calibrated to values you never chose. Maybe your parents instilled them, or your culture, or your religion. Even if you rejected your upbringing, you probably defined yourself in opposition to it, which means it's still controlling you. You're either following the script or deliberately doing the opposite. Either way, the script is directing your actions. This is what Nietzsche meant by slave morality. It's not about literal slavery, but about living according to values imposed from outside rather than created from within. Even rebellion is a form of slavery if you're rebelling against something rather than creating something new. The punk rocker who does everything to shock conventional society is just as controlled by that society as the conformist. They're just reading from the negative image of the same script. You have your way. I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. This terrifies people. We want there to be a right answer, a correct path, a universal truth about how to live. But Nietzsche saw that this desire for external validation is precisely what keeps us from becoming fully human. As long as you're looking outside yourself for meaning, you're avoiding the fundamental task of existence, creating your own meaning. But let's be honest about what this entails. It's not some liberating journey of self-discovery where you find your passion and live happily ever after. It's more like standing at the edge of an abyss and realizing you have to build your own bridge across, and there's no guarantee it will hold. Most people would rather pretend the abyss doesn't exist, or wait for someone else to build the bridge, or just stay on this side forever. Nietzsche identified 3 stages of spiritual development: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel represents most of us, beasts of burden, carrying loads of thou shalts through life. We bear the weight of duty, tradition, expectation, and call it virtue. We measure our worth by how much we can carry, how well we can obey, how perfectly we can fulfill roles we never chose. The good employee, the dutiful child, the responsible citizen. All camels, all carrying weights that someone else loaded onto their backs. The lion is the spirit of rebellion. It roars no. To external commands, tears down old values, creates freedom through destruction. This is where many people get stuck, in perpetual rebellion, defining themselves only by what they reject. The atheist who can't stop talking about God. The rebel who needs something to rebel against. The critic who can only tear down, never build up. The lion is necessary. You can't create new values without destroying old ones, but it's not sufficient. The child represents genuine creation, not childishness, but the capacity to create values playfully, experimentally, without needing cosmic permission. The child doesn't rebel against the old values because it's forgotten them entirely. It's too busy creating new ones. This is what Nietzsche envisioned, humans who create meaning as naturally as children create games, with the same joy, the same absorption, the same lack of self-consciousness. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. The chaos isn't confusion, it's potential. It's the raw material of creation. But most people are terrified of this inner chaos. They'd rather have false order than genuine disorder. They'd rather follow dead rules than face the creative void. They'd rather be told what their life means than decide for themselves. They cling to routines, relationships, and beliefs, not because these things fulfill them, but because they provide structure in a structureless universe. Here's what's particularly cruel. The very education system designed to help us understand the world often prevents us from creating meaning. We're taught to analyze, criticize, deconstruct, but rarely to create. We can explain why every meaning system is historically contingent, culturally relative, probably false. But this leaves us paralyzed. We're too smart to believe in anything, but not brave enough to create new beliefs. We're philosophical enough to see through every illusion, but not strong enough to create necessary illusions of our own. God is dead wasn't a celebration, it was a diagnosis, and Nietzsche saw the symptoms spreading. Nihilism, the belief in nothing. But he distinguished between passive and active nihilism. Passive nihilism says, nothing matters, so why bother? It leads to what Nietzsche called the last man, someone who seeks only comfort, entertainment, mild pleasures. No risks, no growth, no creation, just existence. The last man asks, what is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? And then blinks, having given up on all of it as too difficult, too dangerous, too demanding. Look at modern life through this lens. People working jobs they don't care about to buy things that don't fulfill them. Relationships maintained out of habit rather than passion. Dreams deferred indefinitely in favor of security. The endless scroll of social media, the binge watching, the constant distraction, all symptoms of passive nihilism. We're amusing ourselves to death because creating meaning seems too hard. We've become experts at killing time, which is really just another way of killing life. But active nihilism is different. It says, nothing inherently matters, which means I'm free to create what matters. It clears the ground for new construction. It embraces the destruction of old values as liberation, not loss. This is what Nietzsche advocated, not believing in nothing, but using that nothing as a blank canvas for creation. The active nihilist doesn't mourn God's death, but sees it as humanity's opportunity to finally grow up, to stop being cosmic children, waiting for parental approval and become creators in our own right. What does not destroy me makes me stronger. This isn't a platitude about resilience. It's about how meaning is forged. Every time you survive something that could have broken you, you create value. Not because suffering is inherently meaningful, but because you transformed meaningless suffering into meaningful strength. You become an alchemist of experience, turning the lead of random events into the gold of personal significance. But here's what Nietzsche understood that self-help gurus don't. This alchemy isn't positive thinking. It's not about finding silver linings or believing everything happens for a reason. It's about creating reason where none existed. It's about imposing your will on chaos, not discovering hidden order. The meaning doesn't pre-exist your creation of it. You're not uncovering some cosmic plan. You're writing the plan as you go. Become who you are. But who are you really? Strip away your roles, your habits, your inherited beliefs. What's left? Nietzsche's answer? Will to power. Not power over others. That's a crude misunderstanding that led to terrible historical distortions of his philosophy. Will to power is the drive to overcome yourself, to create beyond yourself, to expand what's possible for a human being to be. It's the force that makes the artist paint, the athlete train, the thinker question, not for external rewards, but from an inner necessity to grow, to express, to become more. This is why Nietzsche valued struggle, conflict, hardship, not because he was sadistic, but because these are the conditions that force creation. Comfort breeds stagnation. Safety enables sleepwalking. Only when pushed to extremes do we discover what values we're willing to create and defend. Only in crisis do we move from camel to lion to child. A life without challenges is a life without growth, and a life without growth is barely a life at all. There are no facts, only interpretations. This isn't relativism, it's responsibility. The facts of your life are what happened. The interpretation, what it means, is always your choice. Lost your job? Fact. Failure or opportunity? Interpretation. Someone betrayed you? Fact. Unforgivable wound or lesson in human nature? Interpretation. And these interpretations aren't just mental exercises. They create the reality you inhabit. They determine whether you're living in a tragedy or an adventure, a prison or a playground. The eternal recurrence, Nietzsche's thought experiment, where you must live your exact life infinite times, forces this responsibility into sharp focus. If you had to live every moment on repeat forever, what would you change? More importantly, what would you affirm? The test isn't whether your life is objectively good, but whether you can will it, choose it, create meaning from it. Can you say yes to your life so completely that you'd willingly live it again, exactly as it was, forever? Most fail this test. They live lives they'd never consciously choose because they never chose them in the first place. They drifted into careers, relationships, beliefs. They followed paths of least resistance and called it fate. Now they're trapped in loops they'd never create, but lack the courage to break free. They console themselves with someday and if only, never realizing that these are the chains that bind them to lives they don't actually want. Amor fati, love of fate. Not passive acceptance, but active affirmation. It means saying yes to everything that made you who you are, because without it, you couldn't create who you're becoming. The pain, the loss, the failure, all raw material for meaning creation. Not because they're good in themselves, but because you can transform them into something valuable. The artist doesn't complain about the darkness of the paint or the blankness of the canvas. These are the necessary conditions for creation. This is perhaps Nietzsche's most radical insight. Meaning isn't discovered, it's created. And creation is always an act of will, always arbitrary in some sense, always without cosmic guarantee. The artist doesn't paint because the universe demands it. The lover doesn't love because it's written in the stars. They create because creation is what makes them human. They impose beautiful patterns on chaos, not because the patterns are true, but because the act of patterning is life itself. But And this is crucial. Creating your own meaning doesn't mean anything goes. It means taking full responsibility for what you create. You can't blame God, society, or nature for your values. You chose them, you created them, you must own them. This is terrifying freedom. It's so much easier to follow rules someone else made, to pursue goals someone else set, to live by values someone else created. At least then, when life feels empty, you have someone to blame. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Superman, a rope over an abyss. The animal lives without questioning, following instinct and immediate pleasure. The Superman creates values consciously, lives by self-created meaning. Most of us are stuck on the rope, afraid to move in either direction. We can't go back to unconscious existence, but we're terrified of the responsibility that comes with moving forward. So we dangle, suspended between what we were and what we could become, paralyzed by the very freedom that could liberate us. Here's what Nietzsche saw coming: a world of last men, people who have given up on greatness because it requires suffering, and suffering seems pointless without cosmic meaning. They seek comfort, security, happiness, small pleasures to fill the void where meaning used to be. They've traded the possibility of creating their own values for the comfort of having no values at all. They live for the weekend, for retirement, for the next distraction, never asking why they're living at all. The last man is the ultimate consumer, gobbling up experiences and products in a futile attempt to fill the meaning-shaped hole in existence. But consumption can never replace creation. No amount of stuff, no perfect lifestyle, no optimized routine can substitute for the fundamental human task of creating meaning. The last man thinks he's found happiness, but he's really found numbness, a comfortable numbness that feels like death in life. But you who sense there must be more, you have a choice. Continue living by inherited values, following ghost rules, serving dead gods, or accept the terrible freedom of self-creation. Stop asking, what is life's meaning? And start asking, what meaning will I create? Stop waiting for purpose to find you and start forging purpose from raw existence. Stop hoping for cosmic validation and start validating yourself through acts of creation. This isn't easy. Nietzsche himself struggled with his own philosophy, eventually collapsing into madness, the weight of total responsibility, the loneliness of authentic creation, the constant tension of making meaning in a meaningless world. It can break you. But the alternative is worse: living someone else's life, dying with someone else's values, never becoming who you are. The alternative is remaining a camel forever, carrying burdens you didn't choose toward destinations you don't desire. Your life is a canvas. Most die with it blank, waiting for someone to tell them what to paint. But you have the brush, you have colors, you have the terrible, wonderful freedom to create. Yes, it's arbitrary. Yes, it's ultimately groundless. But that's not an excuse for creating nothing. That's the very reason you must create something. In a universe without inherent meaning, the creation of meaning becomes the most meaningful act possible. Because in the end, the question isn't whether life has meaning. The question is whether you have the courage to create meaning, whether you have the strength to be your own God, whether you have the will to transform the chaos of existence into something worth affirming. Not for eternity, not for others, but for the simple, profound act of creation itself. The answer isn't in these words. The answer is in your next choice, and the one after that, and the one after that, until choosing itself becomes your meaning, creating becomes your purpose, and you become who you are. Not a discoverer of pre-existing meaning, but a creator of new meaning in a universe that offers none but demands all. What will you create?